Let's get into something people rarely break down properly. If you're what I'd call a recognized loner, you naturally activate a certain kind of person, not because you're hostile, not because you're loud or confrontational, not because you've done anything wrong, simply because you operate in a way that doesn't orbit around them. And for some people, that alone is enough to unsettle them. First, we need to correct the misunderstanding around what this actually means. A recognized loner isn't socially awkward. It's not someone who struggles to connect or form relationships. It's not someone bitter, withdrawn, or disconnected from society. It's someone who is visible, respected, sometimes even admired, yet intentionally chooses distance. You can walk into a space and people notice. You can speak, engage, even charm when you want to. You can be witty, sharp, engaging. You can shift the energy of a room, but you don't attach yourself to it. You don't linger for validation. You don't stretch yourself thin trying to maintain impressions. You don't perform for approval. You don't need others to confirm your worth. And that alone disrupts a lot of people. Now let's talk about the individuals who feel triggered by this. I call them center stage personalities, and not in a flattering way. These are people who, deep down, believe everything should revolve around them. They crave attention. They rely on validation. They need to feel selected, prioritized, important. They want to be the emotional focal point in every environment they enter. Their internal belief sounds like this: I'm the main figure here. Everyone else exists in relation to me. And for a while, that belief works. Because most people unconsciously play along. Most people shape themselves to fit into other people's narratives. They perform, they seek roles, they adjust themselves just to be included. But then you show up, grounded, self-assured, complete, on your own. And you're not auditioning, you're not trying to impress them, you're not trying to decode them, you're not competing for attention, you're not positioning yourself, you're just there. And to someone whose identity depends on being the center, your presence feels like a system error. Here's what's happening psychologically. When you move like this, your energy isn't easily accessed. People can feel it. They're drawn to it, curious about it, sometimes even impressed by it. But they can't fully read you. They can't categorize you. They can't control how they fit into your world. And to someone used to being in control of social dynamics, that lack of access feels like rejection. So their mind compensates. They reinterpret your boundaries as arrogance. They see your silence as judgment. They label your selectiveness as superiority. When in reality, you're just intentional. You don't open yourself to everyone. You don't offer full access to your thoughts. You don't overshare to force connection. You don't attach just because the opportunity exists. But they don't see nuance. They see resistance. And what they really see is someone they can't control. If you zoom out, most people are still trying to be chosen. Chosen as the favorite. Chosen as the closest friend. Chosen as the priority. Chosen as the one that matters most. So they mold themselves accordingly. They overextend. They perform. They abandon parts of who they are just to secure a place in someone else's world. But when you've already chosen yourself, you don't compete for attention. You don't chase position. You don't beg to be acknowledged. You're too busy building your own narrative. And that's uncomfortable for people who need an audience. Because without attention, their identity starts to collapse. Another thing that unsettles them: you can't be controlled through approval. You don't rely on praise to feel secure. You don't depend on external reassurance to validate your direction. You already trust yourself. And when someone can't influence your sense of worth, they feel powerless. Because many of these center stage personalities operate through emotional reactions. They expect you to laugh when they perform, react when they shift moods, match their energy, reinforce their worldview. But you don't play into that. You observe. You notice inconsistencies. You recognize when words don't align with actions. You detect subtle competition. You see through performative kindness. And you don't react. That calm detachment becomes threatening. Because if they can't provoke you, they can't dominate the emotional environment. Your self-containment forces them into self-awareness. And most people would rather project outward than reflect inward. There's another layer to this. You're sensitive to energy. You pick up on what isn't being said. You feel tension before it surfaces. You detect jealousy before it's obvious. You recognize insecurity even when it's masked as confidence. So naturally, you limit your exposure. Not out of arrogance, not because you dislike people, but because you understand the value of your energy, and you protect it. And here's a truth many people resist. When something isn't easily accessible, it becomes more valuable. Scarcity creates intrigue. If you were always available, always explaining yourself, always reacting, always present, there would be no depth to explore. But when you can enter a space fully, experience it, and leave on your own terms, that independence becomes magnetic. You can be alone without feeling empty. You can move solo without discomfort. You can connect with people and still detach without guilt. That kind of emotional independence triggers those who rely on constant external stimulation because they don't know how to sit with themselves. You do. And that's the difference. You'll also notice something interesting. The more unaffected you are, the more narratives people create about you. They'll call you distant. They'll say you're cold. They'll label you arrogant. They'll assume you think you're above others. They'll suggest you're hiding something. Why? Because they need a story that makes your behavior make sense to them. It's easier to label you than to question themselves. Easier to dismiss you than to admit they're unsettled. Easier to criticize you than to acknowledge they're intimidated. And here's the real trigger. You're okay with not being liked. Most people aren't. Most people would rather shrink, bend, or compromise themselves just to avoid rejection. You don't. You understand that not everyone deserves access to you. You understand that your energy is valuable and limited. And you refuse to exhaust yourself trying to be everything for everyone. But let's be honest, you didn't always operate like this. At some point, you were probably the one who gave too much. The one who tried to help everyone. The one who believed your presence could fix people. The one who carried emotional weight that wasn't yours. But you learned. You learned that not everyone wants growth. You learned that some people thrive in dysfunction. You learned that you can't outwork someone else's self-destruction. And once that clicked, you changed. You didn't lose your empathy. You refined it. You still care. You still feel deeply. But now you have limits, and people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will always feel threatened by your boundaries. They remember when you were more accessible, more available, more influenceable. Now you're selective, centered, grounded, unmoved, and they feel that shift. So they test you. They misread your calmness as weakness. They mistake your silence for fear. They assume your restraint makes you easy to push, until they realize it doesn't. Because calm doesn't mean fragile, reserved doesn't mean powerless, and nothing frustrates someone more than realizing they can't intimidate you. Because people who manipulate need access. People who dominate need reactions. People with fragile egos need validation, and you give none of it. So they escalate, they talk, they distort narratives. They try to position you as the problem. But here's the irony. The more they talk about you, the more important you become in their world, while they remain irrelevant on yours. So understand this clearly. You are not responsible for managing someone else's insecurities. You are not obligated to dilute your independence. You don't owe explanations for your boundaries. You're not here to audition for a role in someone else's life. You're here to live yours, intentionally, consciously, and on your terms. Yes, that will unsettle certain people. Yes, they will project. Yes, they will misunderstand. But that's not your weight to carry. You can be kind without being open to everyone. You can be warm without being constantly available. You can care without overextending yourself. The moment you chose yourself, you stopped competing to be chosen. And when you stop chasing validation, you become unforgettable. Not because you demand attention, not because you perform confidence, not because you try to stand out, but because you don't need anything from anyone. And in a world where most people are desperate to be seen, that kind of self-containment is rare. And that's exactly where it goes deeper than what most people are willing to admit. Because once you reach that level of self-containment, you start seeing patterns you can't unsee anymore. You start recognizing how many interactions are transactional, how many connections are built on silent expectations, how many conversations are just subtle negotiations for attention, validation, or control. And the more aware you become, the less you feel the urge to participate in things that drain you. It's not that you think you're above anyone. It's that you see through the illusion. You see how people perform versions of themselves just to be accepted. You see how they laugh a little louder than they feel, agree a little quicker than they should, and attach a little faster than what's real. And you used to do that too. That's the part nobody talks about. You weren't always like this. You remember what it felt like to want to belong so badly that you blurred your own edges just to fit into someone else's frame. But something shifted in you. Maybe it was disappointment. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was just exhaustion from constantly overextending yourself and getting little in return. Whatever it was, it forced you to sit with yourself. No distractions, no noise, just you and everything you had been avoiding. And most people never reach that point because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to stay busy, to stay surrounded, to keep chasing stimulation than to actually face yourself. But you did. You sat in that silence long enough to understand your own patterns, your own wounds, your own tendencies to overgive, to overtrust, to overinvest. And once you saw it clearly, you couldn't go back. That's when your energy changed, not in a loud way, not in a way that needed to be announced, but in a quiet, undeniable shift. You stopped reacting the same way. You stopped explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stopped chasing closure from people who were never going to give it. You stopped trying to prove your value to people who had already decided not to see it. And people noticed. Even if they couldn't explain it, they felt it. The version of you they were used to interacting with wasn't there anymore. The version that would overextend, over-communicate, overcompensate, disappeared. And in its place was someone more still, more observant, more controlled. That kind of transformation makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to confront the role they used to play in your life. Some will try to pull you back into your old patterns. They'll remind you of who you used to be, not because they miss you, but because they miss the version of you they could access more easily. They'll test your boundaries subtly at first. A small comment here, a little pressure there, just to see if you'll fold. But you don't. And that's where the tension builds, because now they're dealing with someone who can walk away without making a scene. Someone who can detach without hostility. Someone who doesn't need to win the argument, doesn't need to have the last word, doesn't need to be understood. And that level of detachment is something most people don't know how to process. They're used to emotional exchanges that escalate, reactions that feed into reactions, energy that bounces back and forth. But when you don't engage in that cycle, it creates a kind of silence that exposes everything. It exposes intentions. It exposes inconsistencies. It exposes who's acting and who's real. And the more you stay grounded in that space, the more selective you become. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. You start realizing that not every connection is meant to be maintained. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every person needs access to your inner world. And that's when your circle gets smaller, but your peace gets bigger. You're no longer impressed by surface-level charm. You're no longer drawn to loud personalities or exaggerated confidence. You pay attention to consistency, to alignment, to how someone moves when there's nothing to gain. Because you've learned that real character shows up in the quiet moments, not the performative ones. And while others are still chasing attention, still trying to be seen, still trying to secure their place in someone else's narrative, you're building something internal that doesn't depend on any of that. Something stable, something quiet, something real. And the more you build that within yourself, the less external noise has power over you. The less opinions shake you, the less rejection affects you, the less validation controls you. Because you've already given yourself what most people are still searching for. And that's why your presence feels different. It's not loud, it's not forced, it's not trying to dominate the room, but it's felt. Because when someone is no longer seeking approval, no longer trying to fit in, no longer adjusting themselves just to be accepted, they carry a kind of energy that can't be imitated. And people pick up on that, even if they don't fully understand it. Some will respect it, some will be drawn to it, and some will feel threatened by it. But regardless of how they respond, you keep moving the same way, measured, intentional, unbothered. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you've learned what's worth feeling deeply for and what's not.